Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. And SA Rugby CEO Rian Oberholzer has revealed that the successor for Rassie Erasmus could potentially already be involved in the Springboks. And given the fact that he says that he is hoping that the successor for the Springbok coach job in 2031, in 6 years' time, by the way, will hopefully come from existing South African rugby structures rather than an external party coming in and taking over the job, which gives a little bit of an indication of some of the options currently and also kind of the path to becoming the Springbok head coach, which is obviously going to be quite an interesting appointment in 6 years' time. You know, we had to wait and see whether it was going to be the case of it being another 6 years of Rassie Erasmus or whether he would step down at the end of 2027. We then got the confirmation last week that he will be the coach up until 2030 or 2031 unless something happens. And now, speaking to SABC, Rian Oberholzer has spoken a little bit about the next step, you know, and the man after Rassie Erasmus, which is kind of the big sort of question. How do you really compare and how do you measure up to a coach who's won, you know, back-to-back World Cups, British and Irish Lions series, current number one team in the world, has revolutionized SA rugby even before he came back. You know, had a lot to say on what was going on in the South African rugby structures, and that's going to be a big shoes to fill. Probably the biggest shoes you could fill in World Rugby right now. You know, Springbok's job at one stage was probably the hardest job in the world. I think it's become a little bit easier these days with being able to pick players from overseas. You know, we do have such a big player base, but it's also a lot of pressure. You know, it's a fan base that does not take kindly to losing and sets very high expectations. Before we get into it, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. So this article was written a couple of hours ago by Jared Wright, who picked up an interview that Rian Oberholzer had given to SABC. And basically, we have seen the fact that he spoke about the fact that there have been 4-year deals. Previous coaches, your Jake White, Peter Villiers, Heineken Meyer, you know, the three predecessors from Rassie Erasmus, and the change in policy came because Rassie Erasmus has basically been so successful, and you know, basically saying that they want to reward that kind of success. So, in terms of then, you know, post 2031, this is what Rian Oberholzer had to say. And he said that is all part of the next phase and the next series and period of time where we start to look at Rassie's succession planning. But it's not just about the men's team. He said we have to look at the women's, under 20s, under 18s, and 7s, so we are happy. And we announced a while ago, Sway Brand is staying on as women's coach until the next World Cup. That's also a massive, massive appointment, you know, because he really has taken that women's side to a different level this year. And the fact that he's going to continue on with them moving forward is a really big positive. He said, we are moving away from a cycle of coaching for one World Cup cycle, and then we feel it's important for them to change. And I think it's quite right. It's about continuity. You know, far too many often, you know, you see a 4-year sort of plan getting put in place, and you kind of do everything regarding up to the World Cup. You kind of put all your plans and your systems and your different structures in place. And if it doesn't go well, you then start from zero. And I think this is the big thing. We're trying to get away from that model, trying to move more towards being able to be a bit more consistent throughout those 4 years, you know, pick up trophies along the way, and then hopefully still be sort of peaking at the right time. He now says that we are now in a process of seeing if it's working and the coach is having success. It's to keep him or her for the next phase, and in that period, bring the next coach through that will take over from them. So again, this is really sort of looking at future planning. So it's not just about the fact that Rassie Erasmus is coaching the Springboks right now. It's who's coming with them, you know, and who's the next person. You know, you look, for example, Kevin Foot in the under 20s. And the fact that he could potentially be an option. You look at Bafana Nhleko and kind of what his coaching, you know, journey is going to be. You know, you have Malusi Matetwa, one of the best attacking coaches in the country, coming through and starting to add his sort of input into some of the different SA Rugby teams, the likes of that we saw in the under 20s. You know, what's his career trajectory? And are these going to be our future, you know, assistant coach and the likes of that? So he said that we're quite stable now for our men's and women's team, and the women until 2039 and the men until 2031, which obviously gives a lot of opportunity for them to build that succession planning. But he said basically over here, and he said, and it gives us ample opportunity to ensure that the succession planning is in place so that when these two coaches step down, we have the right coach in place to take over from them. And I think what's quite important about this whole sort of the idea is the fact that it's about creating the pathway and creating that succession plan as you go, not necessarily just bringing in the next coach. And that's why, you know, as the article mentions, something like Azondile Stick, has long been touted as a potential successor to Rassie Erasmus. Now, some people have spoken about the fact that it might even be at 2020, at 20 after sort of 2019, for the 2023 World Cup or after 2023. That's not been the case. And I think that, he probably would have been, it would have been too soon for him. Now, you're going to have somebody like, if he stays involved, somebody like Zwandile Stick has been involved in the coaching staff since 2018. So, he would have basically been an assistant coach for about 12, 13 years if he then took over in 2031, and I think would be quite ready. A very interesting option is that Dwayne Vermeulen is obviously rising through the ranks very quickly. Now, could he potentially be a future head coach for the Springboks? And I think they very much do rate him as a potential coach. And I think that looking at the coaching options you've got within the SA Rugby system, Zwandile Stick, Deon Davids are currently your assistant coaches that are probably the most likely, because I don't think we'll go far. You're not going to go foreign based coach. You're not going to look at a Jerry Flannery or a Tony Brown, for example. It sounds like unless they start bringing in a Franco Smith back into the system, he doesn't become an option. Same as Johan van Graan, for example, two options who are very much been touted as potential successors. So I think now you're kind of looking at potential options as Deon Davids, who has got head coach experience, to coach the Southern Kings down in Gqeberha, where Zwandile Stick also coached at under 21 level. He hasn't coached a senior side as a head coach. And it's interesting because Zwandile Stick has said that he wants to. He is very open to coaching a senior side. He said right now his job is to support Rassie and to do that job of an assistant coach. But, in his future, he does see himself, as a potential head coach. The question is, will it be the Springboks or does he move away for a little bit and then come back to the SRG? I think if I was the Sharks, I'd be throwing money into Zwandile Stick right now and saying, come in and try and take over at the Sharks. He's the complete right fit. They want to do that whole sort of culture shift. He's a big culture man and loves, the idea of creating and winning mentalities, for example, building with players, having that relationship with players. So I think he'd be a very good option for the Sharks and sort of see where he can take them, kind of get that head coach experience, even if it means moving back into the Springbok setup in 2-3 years' time. But I think those three are your kind of like primary candidates as the sort of South African coaches, assistant coaches in the setup right now. Whether, for example, Swayze de Bruin becomes an option down the line, I think he based his system seems to move directly into the women's game, and that's obviously a very different space to the men's game. You don't quite have the same infrastructure, you don't have the same school system. It's a different sport itself. It's far less power dominant. Although he's basically said, "Bugger that, we're going to make women's rugby power dominant," which I'm a big fan of. He's taken what he's got and he said, "Right, where can I sort of create shortcuts?" So there are options within the SA Rugby system, and it'll be interesting to sort of see if those are the options that could become the eventual Springbok coach. So what do you think of the options right now in SA Rugby? Where would you go as the next coach? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.